and all of their discussions, may it be consistent with your will and your way. We thank you now, God. We speak a wonderful day, a successful day, a glorious day. Bless our nation, our Prime Minister, our government. We plead the blood of Jesus over everyone in the name that is above every name, and we say, amen. You've taught us to say, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Grace and peace.
Good morning, Senators. Good morning. Having suspended the Senate yesterday, we will move on to our second reading of the bill that was presented. Mr. Leader.
Good morning, Madam Vice President. Good morning, Senators. Good morning, Bahamas. I beg leave to move now for the second reading and committal of a bill for an act to promote the redevelopment of communities of the Bahamas through the granting of certain exemptions and fiscal incentives for the renovation and restoration of property and the encouragement of business in a designated economic empowerment zone and for matters connected therewith, the short title of which is the Economic Empowerment Zones Bill. Madam Vice President, let me say, first of all, that there is a great misconception about this bill in people's heads. The first misconception is that this Economic Empowerment Zones Bill is strictly aimed at over-the-hill areas. And let me say that the very first bill that was drafted under the directions of my office, we wrestled with the issue and we came with the idea of making it the inner cities bill, one that would be limited to over the hill. But you know, in public life, when you do nothing, they say you ain't doing nothing. When you do something, the next line is, well, why aren't you doing this and that and the other? Why aren't you? In other words, if you stand still, you're wrong. If you move, you're not right. Because there's always 1,000 ways to do something else. You put an idea in people's heads and they run with it. Members of the opposition had that in their mouths. And so we, being a government that responds, amended the bill and restructured it. And we speak about economic empowerment zones, not just one. So I want to make it clear that although the policy of the government is that we're going to try and make it work in one place, and that one place is the economic zone of the traditional inner city, this bill empowers much more than action in only one place. Let me make it clear that in its initial implementation, the economic zone that will be declared is an economic zone that will be bounded to the north by Meeting Street, to the west by Nassau Street, to the east by Collins Wall, not Collins Avenue. Very rich businesses and big-time insurance companies and all kind of corporate services providers and doctors' offices are on Collins Avenue. This is for a bill for the poor. And that same line of division that historically marked the separation between the mulatto middle class of the UBP in Culmusville and Centerville and the Valley and the poor black Bahamians on the western side. That is the boundary of the economic empowerment zone. Now, they tell you in the old days, plenty car used to be parked against that wall at night, plenty bicycle, and plenty people found ways, ingenious ways, of getting over that wall and getting back over again by the morning. Such was the horror and the inequalities symbolized by a wall. Well, that wall is the boundary. And on one side of that wall is a growing commercial area, and on the other side is an area of the traditional communities of East Street, Mason's Addition, the whole over the hill of Grantstown, the over the hill community collectively known as Bainstown. These areas are the areas of focus, and of course Wolf Road will be the southern boundary for now. The Prime Minister has also indicated that in terms of Nassau, once we can get this zone up and running, and we've ironed out all of the kinks, and any errors or abuses that were possible have been ironed out, we may even have to look at the bill to tighten things up, or perhaps loosen or expand. Then he is looking to extend the zone or create a new zone in the Angliston area, which would include traditional Angliston and the St. Barnabas area, bounded, one would say, by Thompson Boulevard, straight over to East Street and straight back to Robinson Road, that traditional Angliston area. Well, when you get to, yeah, that would essentially cover it. But more than that, this is a bill that applies throughout the Bahamas. And the Prime Minister has already, you notice he's been making a lot of family island trips. He'll say he's going down there to talk about VAT, or he's going to talk about this or the other. He's also doing something very important. He takes with him usually Crown land officers to identify tracts of Crown land that are available and suitable for residential development. So he has got an inventory of available tracts and allotments of Crown land from one end of this country to the next. And, you know, what would be suitable? Would be Crown lands generally that abut or front on the Queens Highway or the main road. Crown lands that are next to existing traditional settlements. Areas where you can have natural growth and expansion of homeowning of Bahamians at minimal infrastructural costs. He has an inventory of that. And he's adding to it every single time he visits a family island. Because the intention is that going forward, over the coming year and years remaining in this term of office, the Prime Minister's first term in office, that we confidently hope and expect will be extended by the grace of God and the Bahamian people in due course. That over this term, what will happen is that certain tracts will be surveyed off and allotments crafted and marked out and surveyed. The government will then come in and put in the essential infrastructure, a roadway, making sure that water lines and electricity poles are in place. And similarly, these areas will be declared to be economic empowerment zones, which will then allow persons to utilize the law that we have crafted to build in government-approved subdivisions their own dwelling homes. And so we will see the orderly expansion of housing opportunities to thousands of family island residents, primarily, throughout the length and breadth of this country. And so that the same opportunities that are being afforded for the purchase of what we call serviced lots at below costs, the only cost being the cost of infrastructural improvement, will be extended to them. And they will have customs duty exemptions on all of the building supplies, their dwelling houses. We already passed that law. But once an economic zone is declared, it will also facilitate businesses by family island residents to be established and to have all of the exemptions that are set out in this bill. Thereby, it's not simply a question of saying we're giving you land to build a house. You'll be giving land to establish businesses. So the perennial complaint of Bahamians that their generation land or land that they consider commonage or crown land are unavailable to them will be addressed in a systematic way, in a lawful way, by a caring government that is going to make available to Bahamians the same economic incentives, the same tax exemptions that foreigners get when they come and say they want to set up a business or open a hotel or do any kind of economic activity. You know, we have a National Economic Council to which, when non-Bahamians apply, they say they want to do some sort of business. I say the Commercial Enterprises Bill. They get exemptions. They get certain rights to have, let's say, exemptions from business licenses or certain fees. Sometimes it's stamp duty exemptions, etc. Well, in the same way that foreigners can get these things, this government has crafted a host of bills and laws now that are going to make the same opportunities available, not to big-time Bahamians, to ordinary Bahamians, to the poor, to family island communities, to persons, and particularly young persons in our family islands, who are looking to establish homes for their families, looking to create jobs, looking to start businesses. This is what this government is doing. And it's doing it in a systematic way. This is the first government in the history of the Bahamas that has crafted a series of laws specifically aimed at putting the average Bahamian, the poor man, what they would call in the 80s the small man, what we say is the ordinary man. I always remember Cecil Wallace Whitfield, and he had some quirks, you know, and one of them was, he'd always speak about the little people, meaning the poor man, meaning the small man, meaning the ordinary person, meaning you and me. the little people. I used to always grind my teeth when I heard Cecil saying that, you know. But he was speaking. He's trying to find a way, you know. By that time, he rejected this term, the grassroots. He never used it because he felt like, you know, the grassroots is only down in dirt. When you're calling someone grassroots, you mean something in the dirt. People are not in the dirt. So he never used terms like the grassroots, which was a term that had currency at that time as well, because, you know, he's speaking about the human being. We may look at it and say, well, it's rather quaint, but at the end of the day, it's the intent and the heart behind it that counts. He was speaking with heart. And so now we come to this bill. Let's look at it. This bill is as a result of the policy of the government in its first iteration going to be targeted at over the hill. This is interesting. You know, over the hill has been, you know, it's a symbolic heart of both of the major political parties, the leadership of whom, at every stage, except one, always claimed affinity, consanguinity, blood. They grew up over the hill. Cecil Wallace Whitfield, Lyndon Pindling, Arthur Hanna, Orville Turnquest, Henry Boswick. And let me say, Madam Vice President, I am so honored and pleased today to see that this Senate is graced by the presence of Mr. Henry Boswick, a former long-serving figure in Bahamian politics, party leader, leader of the opposition in that other place, former leader of opposition business in this place, and president of the Senate. Yeah, 10 years. President of this place. There are few still among us who have served the Bahamian people with the grace, the dignity, the fierce, burning commitment to upliftment of the poor than John Henry Boswick, Queen's Counsel. I commend him and I thank him for his service. And so this is it, that all of the political leadership thus far, bar one, Kendall Isaacs was not an over-the-hill man. He was a little further east. But everybody else, they're over the hill. Brougham Street, Meaton Street, Hay Street, Lillian O'Reilly Corner, East Street, the main part, Tooth Shop Corner. I could name them, where all of these great leaders came from. And now our Prime Minister, Brougham Street, I believe it is, our Prime Minister, a Baintown man. And so Over the Hill has an emotional place. It was the first place of settlement of freed blacks, even before emancipation, in Grantstown. And then later they developed Baintown, etc. And as we came to the 20th century, Chippenham was developed. And these were areas where the black middle classes grounded themselves and began the upward struggle that decades later led to majority rule and independence. And so Over the Hill has a place in all of our hearts. And so it is fitting that this bill, a part of the focused, targeted offering of exemptions and incentives by this government to ordinary Bahamians, that this bill should first be implemented in that wonderful area. Because despite the enormous symbolical, rhetorical love, particularly of the PLP for over the hill, hey, over the hill, that's me people, yeah. Nothing has happened for over the hill under the PLP. In 25 years of uninterrupted government, when they were the lords of the earth, the only time anything substantial was done for over the hill was when Cecil Wallace Whitfield was minister responsible for public works. And Cecil Wallace Whitfield, carrying out the policy, implemented a policy that was successful in totally electrifying over the hill. Cecil Wallace Whitfield, as Minister of Education, in the PLP, no question of that. Fine, fine, no problem. And after Cecil Wallace Whitfield left the PLP, nothing further happened for over the hill. The PLP announced plans to provide a septic system to get rid of outhouse and outside toilets over the hill. Nothing happened. One little piece here, one little piece there. The whole area continued to degrade. Under the PLP, who so loved over the hill? Businesses, and in particular touristic businesses that had been over the hill, because let me tell you, in the old days, say what you will about them other fellas we got rid of in 1967. Say what you will. Under them, you had entertainment facilities owned and run by Bahamians over the hill. Black Bahamians. Paul Mayers. Paul Mayers had, no man, Munnings had Caddenville. Yeah. Paul Mayers had his troupe, his dance troupe, doing native dances over the hill. In the 20s and 30s and 40s, and tourists were coming over the hill every night to enjoy what they would call in those days like native festivities or whatever. But Paul Mayers was marketing to a perception, and he was a world-class performing artist and dancer, world-class, performed for royalty. He was that good. You had the Cat and the Fiddle. You had Peanuts Taylor, had the Drumbeat Club. All of these, up until the 70s. But there was continually under the PLP a slow drag and drop and loss of vitality over the hill. And I remember in the 80s, even Sir Lyndon realized that all this talk was cheap and money buy land, but the best that Sir Lyndon could come up with was what he called the Grantstown redevelopment plan. And he allocated in the mid-1980s $20 million for the Grantstown Urban Renewal and Redevelopment Plan. And that $20 million was like a drop of water in a bucket. You never saw where it went, you never saw what it did, and you never saw it again. Totally, where it gone. Now, when the Free National Movement came to office under Hubert Ingraham, We followed the same matrix set by Pinley. We had continual announcements of great renewal projects over the hill. And I remember this time we allocated all this money, man, cleared down every lot smack and smooth. Clear the garbage. Cleared it all down. Everything was smack and smooth, flat. No garbage. All was clean, 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 clean. Derelict houses were torn down. Overgrown lots were graded up and cleared. Garbage removed. I remember walking there with Amber Dark and Prime Minister Ingram, whole cabinet walking through over the hill. Look what we do. It lasted about 6 months. Drove back to the roads. A lot overgrown again. Man, we were supposed to have, you know, we had collection sites. Bring out your old fridge, bring out your whole stove, put it here in the collection site, and everything was be collected up and done, and wonderful. 6 months later, no change. This government came to office, and let me say something, that I believe the Prime Minister did a lot of thinking. A lot of thinking on this issue. Because he came to a different conclusion. He came to a different conclusion. The conclusion, that's because you're too blind, you can't see. You ain't see nothing. You're too blind, you're willfully blind. You're Pinlin blind. All you can see is find some money and give it to some generals. This is what the PLB do. Give it to some generals and let them all blow it on whatever foolishness, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. I am telling you the difference between us and y'all. The difference between us and y'all as a result of, I think, the rethinking and the new vision of our Prime Minister, Dr. Hubert A. Minnis, the most honorable Prime Minister. He has rethought this, and he came to an existential conclusion that you cannot descend from the top of the hill, Mount Fitzwilliams, to give your blessings and think that you're changing anything. The way you change it is to empower people to help themselves. This is not about, you know, there's an old Chinese saying, you know, give me a fish and I'll eat for a day. Teach me how to fish and I'll eat for the rest of my life. And I'll say, not only will you eat, your family will eat, your friends will eat, generations unborn will eat.
And even you will eat. And poach you.
You do that, sir. You do that, sir. You do that, sir.
Your greatest moment.
This vision of the Prime Minister is one that is deeply imbued with something seriously lacking on the other side. Belief in the people, the power of people to help themselves, not to sit around and beg you for something so you could beg them for their vote. It is imbued with the optimism and confidence that the best people to help people are themselves. Remember the Bible, the words stated to the Apostle Luke, physician, heal thyself. People are best able to help themselves. And if you stop treating persons as if they're basket cases who are deserving only of your handout, particularly when politics, when it's election time, and give them the sustained power to help themselves, they will not disappoint. And so I say that this Economic Empowerment Zones bill is an expression of supreme confidence in the Bahamian people. Now, I hear my colleagues over there, you know, it's very difficult to sit here and listen to the voice of failure from over there. Because all I can say is, if y'all had done one thing right over the hill, we wouldn't have the problems we have in this country today. But 40 years on, 45 years on, most of which were under the leadership of the party you all are blindly following. But you know the Bible says, when the blind lead the blind, all fall in the ditch. Y'all have been falling in ditches for 45 years. Y'all on the other side. And so, let us look at this bill. This bill is not simply a bill that is going to be passed and brought into law. It is part of a focused program designed to empower the over-the-hill area initially, and ultimately this will be expanded everywhere. And so we have here the Over-the-Hill Community Development Partnership, which is a concept that has been worked on. It's a white paper and devised through the office of the Prime Minister. It is his baby. It is a considered, thought out plan that is supported by the best intellectual and technical advice that we have, of Bahamians, that we have as to how best to make the promise of the Economic Empowerment Zones Bill a living reality, initially over the hill, and thereafter everywhere else, wherever there are depressed or growing family island communities or depressed communities in New Providence that also need a boost. This Economic Empowerment Bill, and I'll read what it says, the objectives of this initiative, called at this point the Over the Hill Initiative. It says economic empowerment is about creating the incentives to encourage the ownership and redevelopment of land and homes and business growth in the over-the-hill area, resulting in improved living conditions and job creation. The over-the-hill community has not received the kind of attention needed to create an environment where businesses and residents can thrive. Remember what I said about the world-famous, Bahamians. Peanut Taylor, I didn't mention him. I don't believe that there was a drummer anywhere in the world born with the innate vivacity, skill, and intensity of Berkeley, Peanuts Taylor. I mean, some of them, as a child, just to watch him using his elbows, among other things, to enhance the throb of those drums. And he'd have them range right around him. And all of them moving the same time. Genius. He had a business over the hill. But he didn't receive the support of the government that enabled that business to continue and to thrive. Please, please, please. Listen, I can tell you he didn't. Yeah, I can tell you that. Yeah, I had an uncle who used to be his manager. That's come I used to see him as a child, his manager. And I can tell you, he didn't get support. The same thing with the Cat and the Fiddle. In fact, when Ed Moxie, another visionary, who was a refugee from the PLP, because they were so backwards in their thinking, and so anti-over the hill in their policies, when he set up Jumbay Village, over the hill, well, they killed that. They killed that. And they said, they scorned, they said, what are you doing setting up something for tourists to come over the hill where they are going to be robbed and beaten up by these thugs over the hill? What government said is, no, we're not going to do it there. We're going to set up a Jumbay Village by Fort Charlotte where it's safe for the tourists. That is a historical fact. They killed Ed Moxie's baby. They killed the idea of revitalization of Over the Hill. They killed the Jumbe village and talk fool. But they're going to build one on Fort Charlotte where it's safe for the tourists. And 45 years on, and Sir Clement is in glory now, so is Sir Lyndon, and ain't no Jumbe village nowhere near. In fact, the only authentic Bahamian experience that ended up near Fort Charlotte is Arawak, built by the FNM. And you see how many hundreds of Bahamians who were empowered economically. Man, when the first conch poisoning scare came, Perry Christie, your former leader, once again, they say the blind leading the blind, had nowhere to put them. They go on to Pop Simonet, to Brent, to use Pop Simonet, where the Simonet shipyards were. Yeah. They went to Brent Simonet and they got permission from Brent, because Brent, you know, he was happy to do whatever he could do to help even the government that had defeated his father, even the government that continued to call him all kind of names, talk about him every time they get up on the podium during the night. And after that, they go and see whoever they had to see to get straight. That's the whole thing about the PLP, you know. Talk bad about you during the day and at night, they used to go say hello to you. looking for a blessing. So the vision of Mr. Christie, as Minister of Health, confronted with a Vibrio parahemolytical, whatever it is. He used to love to say, he said so well too, you know, he's a man who could enunciate very well. I remember him, you know, as a young man, because he had a beard like this, you know, he was real, he thought he was a comrade in some ways, when he was a young fella, right? And they used to go to Guyana all the time, you know, visit Comrade Burnham. So he had his revolutionary beard, you know, Vibrio parahemolyticus or whatever. And he had that pronounced well. But he couldn't think of what to do with these people who used to be on Potter's Key. He banned them, closed everything down, and going to Pop Simonet's son, Brent, say, could I use the shipyard to put them on? Well, the fella said, you got to be out of your mind. So some went to Montague Foreshore, and others went to the area that is now called Arawak. And they were chasing them with the police. Fortunately, the Lord intervened and we came to power. And the first thing that we did was stop the police chasing them off the Montague Foreshore, which cost us 15 years of hatred by our base, because until we fixed that problem in the last Ingram administration, it was totally a road blockage and a great inconvenience for anyone who lived east of Montague, because of the fellas were right on the side of the road. But we eventually fixed it, and it's now proper, and all of the road blockages, a lot of parking, a lot of turning areas, and the jet ski fellas can get in, and the boats can get in for whatever, and so it's all well done now. And then we also went to Arawak, and we gave them leases. We put in the infrastructure. We put in the public areas. We paved and created that. We built the administration block. We built bathrooms. Right? We paved the road. We set up everything. And we gave them the leases. And look what they created in Arawak from a government then. A vision for the Bahamian people. We did the same thing in Arawak, essentially, that we're doing in terms of government-owned subdivisions by creating these service lots. We created service lots, basically, with all the infrastructure, and all those Bahamians, all the goalies them had to do was to build. And they start small, and they made money. Then they build bigger, and bigger, and bigger. And look at Arawak. It is a cultural center. All because of the vision of a government, the government of Hubert Ingram at that time. So now we come back to Over the Hill, under the PLP, big talk. Oh, we love, we love, we love. And no action. No action. And they sporadic throwing some money down and putting people's pocket for 1 week, 2 week, one budget cycle, and it's gone. We went down that path, as I said, under the Ingram administration, and we had a similar result. So the question is, how do we change things? And we come again to the existential reimagination led by our Prime Minister to empower people. Give people the benefits. And Bahamians always say, you give everything to the foreign man, you give everything to this one, you give everything to that one, you don't do anything for Bahamians. Well, this and our reform laws in terms of land ownership, service lots, are attempts to directly give to ordinary Bahamians the same economic incentives, tax breaks, and benefits that foreigners get. And the critical difference in this bill is that we don't only apply it to the house, we apply it to the business, the Bahamian-owned business in over-the-hill areas, because we firmly believe that as people improve their properties, as people take advantage and rebuild over the hill, as people feel that they can return over the hill to their ancestral properties, this will be added to and have additional impact by the fact that businesses, because of the exemption, will relocate, or businesses that are in the area will have the benefits of tax breaks that will enable them to reinvest in their properties. I think of the Stardust Properties, for example. I think of Mr. Sawyer and his family. They invested heavily there. They had major businesses, but now it's sitting there derelict. But the vision that that gentleman had to go there, and I remember in the mid-1990s, I mean, that was kicking. Because Bahamian women, as Mr. Ingram would say, from every walk of life, from every corner of this country, came down there on East Street, Blue Road, I guess was, right at Blue Road, to buy all their accessories, their cosmetics, their skin toners, their enhanced hairs, their hair enhancements, the bangles, you name it. I mean, it became a real, in fact, tourists, I had friends who came, who would visit, and they would ask me, where can I get this? I said, there's only one place. Come, let me take you over the hill. You know? And so, the genius in this bill is that it ties in incentives to encourage homeowners to repair, to rebuild, and hopefully to take up personal occupancy. And it also encourages businesses to have the incentives to enable them to prosper and therefore provide jobs so that people could walk to work, not have to catch a jitney. Or if they live in the area, they themselves could walk to work. Now, of course, you know, this is all a part of an overall strategy. So we obviously, as a government, are going to have to focus on some critical things like improving street lighting. That is absolutely critical. Widening, where possible, roads. That is critical. Providing a system, we may have to go to a system of one-way streets so that you don't have congestion. Putting in better sidewalks and other facilities. The Prime Minister also has a master plan for the redevelopment of the southern recreation ground. That really is like, for him, the baby to get that fixed. And right across the road, the old city meat markets lot, is slated for development. We are working on developing a standardized, structured, public-private partnership framework that will allow the pent-up resources in the Bahamian Financial Center, maybe $2 billion of money earning less than 1% interest on deposit, whether it's pension funds, whether it is accumulated insurance funds that they need to invest in order to be able to pay the policies, etc. Whether it is credit union money, there is a whole, and then personal and individual savings deposits in various institutions. There are billions of untapped resources, and if you can earn 3 or 4% in investing in a public-private partnership that's guaranteed, that's 400%. If it's 3 or 4%, 400% better than the 0.5% rate of interest you're getting by leaving it in a bank. So this is what is happening, and so we're looking at, the Prime Minister's looking at the Southern Recreation Ground, and then we're looking at the old city markets building there, and that whole area that extends from the corner of Farm Road, Marketry, straight up, back over the hill, going in the other direction, towards the Victoria Gardens property. All of that is going to eventually be developed into a central government center, parliamentary complex, a judicial complex. The concept right now is at the old site to begin that with a public-private partnership by building a state-of-the-art modern office complex to house ministries such as the Ministry of Immigration and the Ministry of Public Service and Public Personnel. The reason being to prevent the continued rental of buildings by the government. Government has exploded. I mean, we spend now close to $50 million just paying rent for office buildings. Well, that's $50 million. Instead of going in the hands of a few rich people, that would be better invested if we had a public-private partnership and pension funds that represent thousands of Bahamians. If individual Bahamians with their $5,000 and $10,000 units so that they could buy, or contribution, that they could buy their bridge bonds like they did the bridge, they could earn, the straw vendors could earn, the hotel bus boys could earn, the jitney driver could earn, everybody could participate in this, and they'd get a fixed return. So that is what we're working on. So we have a plan. This government has a vision. If we put a major government office on that site, what do you think will happen? Restaurants will look, you gotta have lunch? So all of the properties around there, people will put eateries, restaurants. You will see that whole area, Jail Alley, that area there, that whole area has to be reconfigured. The whole road that runs, underneath the police compound with a big wall, Jail Alley, I think it is, comes up. That has to be widened. That whole area, it has to be reconfigured. It has to be reconfigured so that there's a road that will run from Farm Road straight to East Street without having to go through all these little juk corners. And so once you have a proper through flow of traffic, then what happens? Well, I'll tell you what happens. When we cut the Charles Sanders Highway, development happens. If traffic can move, people can come and go. If they can come and go, they can come and buy. If they can come and buy, they can come and spend money. That's really what it is. But when you have constriction, every doctor tell you, life is about flow. Your whole body is about things that flow. When you get a constriction, you clear it or Delia wrote the note. That is in your body, in your life, so in your economy. How do you think America is so great and so strong? Because they believe, the one thing they do is they build a road. Because roads connect people. And this is what we're going to do. We have a plan for over the hill. We're not just throwing good money after bad. We are sacrificing tax revenue and putting that sacrifice in the hands of the ordinary Bahamian over the hill. Now I know members opposite, when they get here, oh, we'll screech and holler. Gentrification, gentrification, as occurred across the other side. Well, I don't want people to get scared by no word, no matter how much they curly lip, screech and holler it. At the end of the day, we want Bahamians who own properties over the hill, ancestral homes, or who live there, to redevelop these properties. I remember my uncles and aunties living off East Street in Florida Court, on the house on the 4 concrete block on the stilts. I remember us playing under the house, me and all my cousins, the boys, trying to shoot lizard with slingshot. we were really cruel. We were really cruel to lizards, you know. That's why, you know, I can't, if I see a lizard in distress, I got to pick it up by the tail and throw it away. You know, because I know the things we used to do with lizards when we were little boys. And chimneys. Man, we used to try to murder them. We were very cruel. We young boys, you know. And that's how we were cutting our teeth. But these properties, you know, I saw how the middle class developed. I saw my uncles and aunties, my granduncles and aunties, they moved, they were on the house on stilts, they got jobs, they got businesses, then the house on stilts became a house in Dunottage, and the house on stilts got sold. Then I drove around and I looked at some of the sites, and all you could see is the stilts. The house gone, everything to rack and ruin. What we are saying is to those Bahamians that have gone through this experience, or who've been born in later generations, but who look back fondly at the old ancestral property and see that it's overrun, it's fallen down, maybe they had at least rent it out room by room. Okay, fine. If you don't want to live there, build some apartments. Make them small enough so that you can continue the practice of the rentals, whatever, but rent habitable and sanitational and proper dwellings to people. And if you do so, you may be able to charge a little more rent, yes. But you provide a better standard of living, even if you're only renting. If you want to build a few condos, why not? Why not? And you can live in one. You could build a duplex, you live in one, etc. When you do so, you'll get customs duty exemption on all of the items that you need to build your home or your businesses. Anything that's affixed to that wall will be covered. Anything that's affixed to the building will be covered, which is a lot more than was covered before this law came into force. Yeah, well, fine, you know, like I say, we'll look at that in due course. But one problem with appliances is appliances are not fixed to the property. They're not affixed to the land. It is very difficult to be policed, to ensure that if the government gave an exemption for an appliance, a fridge, that the fridge don't be in the building on Monday and be down South Beach on Tuesday. So I'm sorry. Well, anyway, you see, this is exactly, Madam President, an iteration once again of the same tendency of the blind opposite. They didn't do nothing for 45 years, 25 of which, and another 10, 35 in government. They did nothing. Not anyone know about appliances. Okay, well, the fact is, the answer is not no. The answer is that this law is, as far as we're taking it now, which is for anything that is affixed to the premises. I am not going to presume to tie the hands of the government. I'm telling you what this law does. This law deals with anything affixed to the premises. It doesn't say no. It just says what it's doing now, and in due course the government will consider what may be doable in the future. But let's at least get this right. Let's at least get this right. Now, when you look at this bill, the idea is to empower people, give them the ability. It's not for us to dictate what should be done. What we want to see is renewal over the hill. We want to see construction work going on. And I'll say this, another unique thing about this bill, and I again credit the Prime Minister directly for this thing, because we structured the whole thing about exemptions in the classical way that we got from 1,000 PLP bills, okay, which is anything you import in the country, you could get customs duty off. And the Prime Minister says, but what about the business in over the hill or anywhere else that is already imported? Why can't they get some of this business? So we had to go back at it, and we crafted it in such a way that it applies not only to imported goods that you import, but if you go to Hannah's Plumbing and you want to get your stuff, Hannah's already paid the duty on it. You will be able, when you show your certificate, you get a certificate with your business, whether you are a homeowner, you get a certificate that shows that you have the right, and they can go to Hannah's Plumbing right there in the Grove, and they can get the items they wish to buy duty free. It's not a bonded warehouse. They're not bonded. They are not bonded. These are persons who would have bought in for their own business purposes. The Kellys or the Hannahs or the Dorset, they're not bonded warehouses. They are their buildings. They bought in their stuff to sell to the general public. They've already paid their duty on it. But I, as a Bahamian, if I am qualified and I get the certificate to develop a property over the hill, I can go to them, show them the certificate. They will then give me the price less the duty, and they will then get a credit from them. It is not a bonded warehouse, though. This is the point I'm telling you. You know, what I find irritating about members opposite is they'll raise some red herring. This issue of bonded warehouse is not the point. The point is about whether the ordinary Bahamian who gets a certificate, who wants to get duty-free stuff, can only get it from away or from someone who is rich enough, let's say, taking your bonded warehouse in, rich enough to have a bonded warehouse where you could bring in a bunch of stuff and keep it in bond, waiting for someone to come buy it, who has duty-free exemption, which nobody would have had before we passed this bill. So only the rich could have done that. Okay, so this law will allow the Bahamian, the ordinary Bahamian, to go to the ordinary Bahamian supplier and obtain duty-free goods right here in Nassau, and that supplier will receive a tax credit from the government so that when they bring in their next shipment, whatever their credit is, they won't have to pay that on the duty for the next shipment. And so it'll work straight through. Okay. I didn't think, Madam President, that it would help us to go clause by clause by clause, but no, because I'll let you come. And when you go to clause and ask me, I have the answer. Okay? I think it's better for people to understand the concept of what we're trying to do. And I want to end with this. What we are trying to do is we are not trying to give a hand out. The government is trying to give a hand up. We are trying to help people to help themselves. On that note, Madam President, I commend this bill to my colleagues in this place and to the Bahamian people. This bill is putting the power in the hands of the people. I urge every Bahamian, make good use of it. Let us together, hand in hand, rebuild our traditional over-the-hill community and make it a place that will truly be a paradise open to everybody. Not only ourselves, but all of our visitors, to all of the new businesses and new entertainment facilities that will be created there, along with new dwelling houses for ordinary Bahamians. I thank you, Madam President. It has been moved and then it has been moved. Hold on, stick. Hold on.
Second.
Hold on.
It has been moved and that a bill for the Economic Empowerment Zones Bill be read a second time and committed. Is there a seconder? Senator, the chair recognizes Senator Knowles.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice. I rise to second this wonderful bill and to add my 2 cents to this most pivotal bill that is before us. Madam Vice President and honorable senators, I'm indeed privileged and grateful to stand in this honorable place to second this bill and by extension contributing to what I called a timely, self-explanatory bill, one of the shortest as I have seen since I came to this place, and most exclusive. The leader has left no stone unturned, and he has, in his good way, in his knowledgeable way, given us food for thoughts, and he went real back. And I am grateful for that, so that makes us, that makes me, my contributions somewhat easy and words. Before us is the Economic Empowerment Zone Bill of 2018, I'm sorry. Both words, economic and empowerment, Madam Vice President, were carefully kerned together to bring about an awareness of impending initiatives and incentives, not only for persons in the designated zones, but also for spin-offs and persons in the family of islands and throughout the Bahamas. The People's Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Hubert A. Minnis, must be congratulated for his wisdom and fortitude and determination to return to the place of his birth, to help to uplift the standard of living in those over-the-hill communities that have somewhat long been forgotten. Madam Vice, this is commendable. Together with the private sector and the civil society, this piece of legislation, when passed, and notice I said when passed, would be a landmark and would change the inner cities from here on in. and also the surroundings. Over the years, I have witnessed the deterioration of places over the hill. Many owners have left and went elsewhere. Like someone says, from Baintown to Eastern Road and elsewhere. And they reside, and that's okay. But as they left these areas, many persons were attracted to these areas. These persons, most of them were not really born in these over-the-hill areas, but see it as an opportunity to move for whatever purposes. With the moves and the shakes of those, the social aspect of those areas comes some unwanted things. Some unwanted characters move in as others move out. And of course, we see years and years of the inner city being deteriorated. In simple words, Madam Vice President, there were times when the over-the-hill areas were the hub for traditional Bahamian families. Now what has been left and replaced is abandoned buildings, that there are cars and old furnitures and high bushes and unkept areas. And of course, like I said before, they would attract some misfits. And of course, we cannot hide or stick our heads in the sand and say that there was not a proliferation of crime within those areas. But this economic empowerment zone bill would be an opportunity to empower scores of Bahamians to return, not only return back to those areas and lead a more productive and prosperous life, but also to invest in businesses. This bill, like I said, would also change the landscape of Bahama land. And even though it is pointed for a specific zone or some specific zones, the spin-off from the other areas and of course the other family islands would be welcome. The bill, Madam Vice President, promotes the redevelopment of communities through the granting of certain exemptions. And this is good. The bill was not just thrown together as words. It is a certain exemptions and physical incentives for the renovation and restoration of properties and the encouragement of businesses in designated economic empowerment zone and for matters connected thereto. This progressive, in my opinion, this progressive piece of legislation that will create tax-free zone to empower residents and will also improve their way of life, particularly in communities over the hill and by extension places thereabout. Now, one will say that this is only earmarked for New Providence. The zone is just for New Providence. While it is configured to begin with the zone in New Providence, as we refer to it as over the hill, Madam Vice President, this will be extended by extension, by spin-off to especially, and I speak especially for the Family Islands. The Prime Minister, in his wisdom, earlier this year, sought to bring some structure and process by presenting a white paper to restore the over-the-hill communities. And just recently, the budget reflects that several millions was allocated for this initiative. It's my firm opinion that many communities would flourish if the opportunities are available. And this bill spells opportunity. Madam Vice President, I note that over the years, many studies were done by persons and even by university. These were done to seek to transform the over-the-hill community. I am aware that they were also done to advance the desperately needed infrastructures, and similar to what this bill is trying to show us. But very little has been done with those studies. There were attempts by successive government to bring about some things and to help to improve the overall living conditions of many Bahamians. But sadly, the impact of those particular studies was not readily seen in the communities. And so year after year, we saw mounting deterioration in those communities. In fact, it appears as though there was no hope and no help for the city. And so this bill is a sobering one. It's a real one. And in reality, it's a glimmer of hope and help. Now that, I gotta be careful saying hope and help, because that was a slogan not many moons ago. And based on what Bahamians have been saying throughout, that there wasn't much help and it certainly wasn't in hope. But I'm saying to you today that this particular bill is a signal for help and hope. There are some instant initiatives that residents, home and property owners should tap into, Madam Vice. It's much that meets the eye, and so residents in those areas and those that are out of the area who has an affiliation in those zones ought to tap into what the government has planned to do for that area. First of all, you should qualify yourself you are asked to be qualified even as a poor and small or medium business. There are lands to be developed. The government is proposing to build houses, sorry, not build houses. The government is proposing to acquire land for the building of houses, that area. I'm sure there's a qualification for it. So persons in the area must seek to ready themselves, knowing that they will be exempted from real property taxes, custom duties related to constructions, equipment, and completing their building in a specific period of time. They are also exposed to the excise tax, stamp tax, and the imposed, or that is imposed, sorry, on real property. To tap into these initiatives, further, the qualified will be exempted from custom duties for the purchase of a vehicle for the use of their business with appropriate marking. Madam Vice, I could not help from noticing that varying opportunities for small and medium-sized businesses in this bill reminds me of my island home and how we cherish the small businesses that has been able to thrive in our small communities. This is indeed the poor man's bill. Like the poor, the Bible says the poor are always with us. Small businesses are also with us. And this is a grand and golden opportunity to tap the persons within that area to tap into these small business ventures. The pillars on which this bill was built on are timely and bodes well for community development and partnership initiative. 1, social empowerment and the preservation of Bahamian heritage, rejuvenation, Madam Vice, smart technology. The young is also affected in this. The young has a place in this bill. In fact, this bill is for mostly young and first-time owners. Then we have green technology, the youth and the elderly empowerment is also in this bill. And the economic empowerment is definitely in this bill. I want to encourage the resident in the economic empowerment zones to take every or all advantages possible to better their condition within the zone and by extension out. I want to encourage them to read and understand the bill from themselves. And if they are in doubt, ask questions. The government is prepared to answer any and all questions pertaining to this economic will. In fact, this is, like I said in the beginning, it's self-explanatory. It's simple. It's in simple language, and the least amount of us could understand. I also employ those residents and those persons that are affected when it comes under this bill to inform your neighbor. Go back to the days of being neighborly. Be your neighbor's keeper. Find out about what is happening within your zone. Safeguard your heritage. Safeguard yourself. This is what this bill speaks to. You don't need to. There's no need for you to obtain second-hand information. The bill is there for you to read, for you to digest, for you to understand. If perhaps you don't understand, I reiterate that the government is prepared to answer every and all questions pertaining to this. Madam Vice, there may be some among us who have an agenda and who seek to see the bill in a different light. That is their right. But I'll tell you something, that the bill, again, is self-explanatory, and it's written in simple English so that the least among us could understand. Now, their agenda might be to spread negatives about the bill. I ask the persons living in the zone to take time out and review the bill for yourself and see how best it suits you. Those parts that don't suit you, well, discard it. That's your right. But in this bill, in this poor man's bill, there is room for all. There's room to better your situation in your communities. I say to you, use this as an opportunity to appraise and enhance your standard of living. Don't fail to be a part of a community. Look out for each other again. Look out for each other. Become entrepreneurs. Become business persons, business partners. Partnership for success. The Economic Empowerment Bill 2018 will help to empower the young. This is a golden opportunity for the young first-time starters. Be a part of history in the making, especially as it relates to history and culture. In the Bahamas, we are steep in our history and in our culture, and there was a time when Over the Hill was the hub for history and culture. Be a part of that. This bill seeks to bring all of that back. Finally, Madam President, Madam Vice President, I look forward to see the family of Ireland receiving the spin-off and the creativity and the economic boom and the economic empowerment. I am happy to report that in the family of islands, Urban has started about 8 centers. Not about. We have 8 centers in the family of islands. And we certainly are a work in progress. But I look forward to the days and the time when we too, in the family of islands, would, and I talk especially for those family island in the south, especially that was hit some in 2015 by Hurricane Walking, and some of us have not yet caught ourselves yet. We are similar to those in the economic zone where it might not be liquidated, you might not have all those broken down houses, but the objective is basically the same thing. We need that economic boom. And I choose to look at the communities when this will be expanded to Auckland's and Crooked Island and Long Key, Nagua. These are the areas that can benefit wisely, and parts of Grand Bahama as well, yes, from this economic empowerment bill. I'm excited because I choose to look at the bright side of life. We have choices, and there are things that the government has already done that we can tap into. And so I feel that once tapped into it correctly, we are well on our way for benefits, partnerships. Again, I say we are a work in progress, but I look forward to the creation of the smaller zones. A little here, a little there, a little elsewhere, a little in Crooked Island, a little in Russelltown, Grand Bahama, a little in Inagua, a little in Exu, and by extension, the whole Bahamas. Cat Island, how could I forget? So could it. I want to end by saying we could all lay down and play dead, and don't worry about anything. Don't stretch your hand to help the poor. Don't stretch your hand to see like we don't see and hear like we don't hear. But Madam Vice, that would not be the best thing in this day and age. Though others make fun, and though others shy away, or though others feel that they have the answer to everything, that has never been the case, because I don't know that the God makes us person. I don't know the perfect person that the Lord has made, that my Lord has made. And so we work towards perfection. And until then, Madam Vice, I am proud to stand up and give my piece, and to say that I second this Economic Empowerment Zone Bill 2018 most heartily. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Vice. And it's truly a pleasure to be here today in good health in our beautiful country, and to say that a good opposition in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas truly makes a difference, because it will keep the present government feet to the fire. And that's the reason why we're here. And that's the reason why our democracy works so well. Madam Vice President, it is with great concern for the poor and the residents in the proposed economic empowerment zones that I rise to make my contribution to a bill for an act to promote redevelopment of communities of the Bahamas through the granting of certain exemptions and physical initiatives for the renovation and restoration of property and the encouragement of businesses in a designated economic empowerment zone. The reason why I read that is because that is exactly what the long title of this bill has outlined. And it is our concern to review the 15 clauses of this bill to clearly indicate that much of the clauses that follow the outline of the bill simply do not line up with the content. Madam President, we on this side are still not clear of what are the key objectives behind this bill. Because as presented, they truly do not reflect the government's intent, and at the appropriate time in this debate, we will be making important suggestions and amendments to the leader. I will make suggestions to you. And these suggestions, we believe, will clarify exactly some of the misconceptions in the bill and ultimately protect the poor residents who need the relief that the government is trying to bring to them. Madam Vice President, in the other place, our leader clearly indicated that the bill that is on the floor today is flawed. And the way it is drafted, it would ultimately help the rich at the expense of the poor. Madam Vice President, after close examination of the 15 clauses of this bill, we on this side is still perplexed on how the designated economic empowerment zones will bring real relief and opportunities to the poor and the unemployed. A few weeks ago, I listened carefully to the debate in the other place. And this morning, watched the leader on the side opposite present his case and try to convince the Bahamian people that the government's intent is to assist the poor and the thousands of residents who live in the overall communities. Madam Vice President, I know firsthand about these communities because I was born in the Centerville constituency and spent much of my childhood in the community where I gained an education. My mother was a domestic worker and my father was a civil servant who struggled for a better way for 8 siblings in a difficult time in our history. Today, I am told that more than 60 to 70% of the indigenous over-the-hill families have moved into other communities and are either renting their old family dwellings or simply sold out. The truth of the matter is, things are constantly changing in these communities, and the majority of families that I knew in the community I grew up in have been replaced and is now a diverse immigration population who are currently renting. Madam President, the research will confirm that the implementation of similar economic empowerment zones in our country improved encouraged business activities, and the government concessions proved to be only a catalyst that will cause the chain reaction. But the catalyst is really only the agent. We need all the other ingredients to achieve the objectives that the government says is outlined in this bill. But after taking a closer look at the business currently operating in the proposed economic empowerment zones, we have learned that many are either owned and operated by foreign nationals or wealthy Bahamian merchants. So the big question for the AG and all of you on the side opposite, with the passing of this bill, who who will really benefit from the concession?
Will benefit.
So blind as they who will not see.
Will it be the large immigrant population? Will it be the tenants, the landlords, or even the larger business establishment who have been operating in the communities for years? Madam Vice President, it is our belief, and we are entitled to this belief,
Leave the shanty down over there.
that as currently drafted, this bill, with no accompanied regulations, could potentially displace current residents from their single-family dwellings, adversely affect mom and pop shops, and other cottage industries. If we are not careful,
That's what will happen.
if we are not careful, many of these home-based industries will be quickly abolished and will be gobbled up by the big business with capital for benefit in these concessions. Madam President, we have also learned that there are businesses in these proposed zones who have multiple locations in New Providence. And with the concession offered, in these economic empowerment zones would assist the growth and development of the other established businesses outside of the zones. Therefore, the legislative framework and regulations governing the execution on the ground, you see, because it's easy to talk and push paper. Try to implement what you're talking about on the ground. I know. I live in a free trade zone. And we know how difficult it is to prevent leakages out of a free trade zone. And it will be the same challenges you will have with the preventing leakages. Precious government revenue outside of the economic zones. Therefore, the legislative framework and regulations governing execution on the ground must prevent these leakages in order to protect taxpayers' revenue and ensure that the overall objectives of this bill is carried out.
You've been benefiting from Freeport for 40 years.
Mr. AJ, Mr. AJ, let me finish my contribution. You can comment later.
I wonder how much you got.
Madam Vice President, during the Prime Minister's communication in the other place, he spoke about the poor and the need to ensure that all government policies and programs line up in order to prevent wastage and create economic opportunities to the less fortunate in our society. But what is so amazing, Madam Vice President, is the fact that the Prime Minister political rhetoric never seems to line up with the government policies. And we've been noticing these trends with bills that have been coming to this place. One defect after another defect after another defect, and the political rhetoric is ahead of these bills, and the bills do not line up with what you're saying. Madam Vice President, in fact, in the last budget, which is still fresh in the minds of the Bahamian people, the government shoved taxes. I didn't say shove it down our throats, particularly to the poor. Now they are back again talking about increasing medical expenses and fees. They are back again putting more taxes on the poor while reducing social services benefits for the unemployed, the elderly, and even gone as low as to cut the children uniform and shoes. My Lord, and come back here today and talking about you trying to help poor people.
Yes, we are.
Madam Vice, my mother always told me, son, she has Alzheimer's now, but I remember this. She said, son, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And after reading this bill, it is in its entirety and reflecting on the government's political objectives outlined in clause number 3, it is crystal clear. This political objective, it only could be political, outlined in clause 3, it's crystal clear that the government intends to encourage economic activities in these designated zones. Yes. By way of construction and business activity. Let me finish, AG. But other than encouraging corporate social responsibility, which is not clearly defined in the bill, this bill fails to demonstrate the real commitment to social empowerment of residents who live in the overall community. Stop babbling.
Babbling.
Stop babbling with political rhetoric and put some money in the hands of these people in the community. Therefore, Madam Vice President, not handouts, hand-ups. I can explain what hand-ups are. Empower some of the young people to be entrepreneurs. Give them the funding. Where's the funding in the bill? Therefore, Vice President, I echo the voices of my colleagues in the other place with many concerns and Bahamians who live in the Overhill communities who believe that this bill in its current form is flawed and without further amendments and a well-drafted regulations cannot pass the watchful eye of us on the opposition side.
That's right.
We're not going to sit back and allow this to go without putting on the record the flaws that we see.
Yep.
Madam President, in view of the fact that no regulations accompany this bill, we on this side will suggest some important amendments to this bill that we believe will bring clarity to the government's intent. Madam Vice, why is the government trying to rush this bill through Parliament without further consultation and proper consultations, particularly to the residents who will be affected? The bill needs additional work, AG. It needs additional work. It needs additional work and should have never been tabled in the other place without the regulations, because the regulations are very important in order for this bill to work.
Point of order.
Where the regulations is.
Point of order. Point of order. I know that, you know, in the scheme of things, the good senator opposite is a baby parliamentarian. You just get here.
Yeah?
Okay? He only spent 5 years in that other place, and now he's here. But the little time he's had there, he'll know even his government bought bills without regulations. It is not required. The bill,
I didn't say it was
they
required.
passed the whole Insurance Act, and it took 15 years to bring it into force. It took 15 years to bring it into force because they never produced the regulations for the bill to be brought into force. Okay? The fact of the matter is, this bill can be brought into force without regulations.
Big mistake.
And the bill does have power for the minister to make regulations, and it is very clear as to what he will, in due course, make regulations to achieve. That does not, and every bill, you can look behind you at those books called the Statute Laws of Bahamas.
Stop baffling.
That is a silly point.
Stop baffling.
You can find 1,000 bills in there.
Bring the regulations.
With the words similar to that in Section 15, with power for the minister to make regulations. Regulations, and the power is given, and in due course, the minister exercises it.
Okay.
Okay? One last very quick point. The regulations specify exactly what will be covered.
What will be covered?
What items will be covered and eligible for concessions. Now, on your point about some chattels, yes, some chattels will be eligible for concessions, cars and vehicles, business trucks, but they will be marked, and that is provided for in the bill, marked with a special marking to show that they are within the zone.
Let me finish.
No, I just want to say one thing, okay? Please, it is not a requirement to pass a bill.
I never said it was required.
That the regulations accompany it.
I never said
this
it was
bill
required.
can work without regulations as is. Thank you.
Madam Vice President, I allow the AG to get up because it's the honorable thing to do.
And you need
but it's not a point of order.
So much
I never indicated that regulations are mandatory with the laying of bricks. So all of that he said is irrelevant to my contribution. I asked the side opposite, because of the sensitive nature of this bill and the way how the bill is drafted, there are flaws in our belief that will allow leakages as a result of the concessions that will be administered by the government, which is precious taxpayers' revenue. And if the regulations accompany this bill, it will plug up those holes and make the bill more effective and palatable to those who are to receive the concessions. Madam President, in the 2018 budget debate, the Free National Movement presented and passed a 60% increase in value-added tax that is now in effect in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. This increase in this regressive consumption tax without economic research will have an impact on many of the government empowerment zones because the residents in those zones are now subjected to pay an additional 60% on items consumed.
Bread basket free. There's no tax on bread basket.
You don't want to have bread basket.
Senator Sawyer, I don't want to go there. Let me focus on my bill because we're going down the wrong road. That's a drop in the bucket, my brother. Madam Vice President, these paradoxical policies by the Minister administration to increase taxes on the backs of the poor without any compensation, then turn around and create economic empowerment zones in low-income communities that will help the wealthy is reflective of bad governance. My question to the members on the side opposite, how will the poor with no financial means capitalize on the proposed concessions to renovate their homes or open their businesses?
How?
These policies are not well thought out. And this exercise will prove to be nothing more. So stop talking about the poor. This is nothing more than an economic catalyst to spur economic activity in urban areas for those who have cash in their pockets. Madam President, I have said it before and I'll say it again. The legislative agenda of this government is lacking. Seems not to be addressing the pressing issues facing our country. And their take is to take it or leave it. They have become cold, callous, and insensitive to the needs of the Bahamian people. And this bill is a reflection of your policies. I listened as the AG spoke about all the great things of this bill, and I clearly indicated to him that I will pull this Hansard a year ago.
A year from now.
A year from now, excuse me, sir. A year from now. And read it back to you.
I want you to do that.
I will do it.
Yes.
Sadly, Madam President,
I made you the economic show.
after more than a year in office, senior members of the cabinet, including the Prime Minister, are still on the campaign trail. Politicking. Politicking every issue, including this bill, which, as drafted, will empower the rich at the expense of the poor. Madam Vice President, we must remind the Free National Movement that the political campaign is over. And we should not be playing political games in this honorable place because thousands of Bahamians are counting on us to get it right. Governance is difficult and more difficult in serious times. And Bahamians on both sides of the political divide are expressing deep concerns about the capability of this administration to govern effectively, which include creating and implementing sound policies that will truly empower people, not rhetoric, not talk. Real sound policies that will see poor people in a better state and to be empowered. This bill, in my view, does not reflect good policy decisions. I believe I understand what the government is trying to do, but because you're rushing the bills, the clause do not add up with what you're saying. I've read them. Put some meat in these clauses to protect the poor man. Give them the opportunity to bend. Madam Vice President, Grand Bahama can boast of one of the oldest free trade zones in the Western Hemisphere. Yet the struggle is real. With the highest unemployment rate in the country and the poverty index that continues to escalate, even with 5 members of parliament and senators who hold substantial ministerial posts, things are slipping and going from bad to worse. In spite of the present state of affairs, the government still continues to politicize its agenda and placing people on the unemployment line. Look at what has happened in the 52-week program. People have been displaced. People who were doing the job effectively have been removed and replaced. Madam President, during debate in the other place, I heard one of the members of parliament speak about the possibility of the implementation of an economic empowerment zone in communities on Grand Bahama, particularly those who have been severely impacted by Hurricane Matthew. I happen to agree with that member that we need to empower the poor and the unemployed by giving them real opportunities and the economic means through grants or low-interest loans to carry out business ventures. Unfortunately, this bill, in its current form, is lacking and offers nothing more than duty-free concessions that currently exist in East and West Grand Bahama, put in place by our last administration, only to stem economic activity. Madam Vice President, what the people of Grand Bahama need is serious direct foreign investment, along with a major economic injection into Grand Bahama's economy by the Free National Movement government. The 60% increase on VAT on the backs of the residents of Grand Bahama is proving to be unbearable, particularly in our challenging economy, and will further delay the recovery agenda that is in store for Grand Bahama to bounce back. Madam President, people are hurting. And yes, you have to give credit where credit is due. There have been small bites into the big pie, but the effects of these small bites will be felt long-term and not short-term. Once again, the official opposition is calling on the government to increase social services subsidiaries immediately. And there are reports of children and elderly on Grand Bahama who are experiencing great difficulty, and we need help. After all, Mr. AG, you said it's the people's time.
It is.
So come clean with the residents of Grand Bahama. Stop the lip service, my brother, about the poor. Deal with the issues that are currently on the ground. Get it right. For the many poor, displaced individuals who have slipped through the cracks for years and waiting for much needed relief. Madam Vice President, I've been told that the Department of Social Services on Grand Bahama remains underfunded and paralyzed even with the 60% increase on value-added tax. They are unable to adequately address the social needs of the community. It has also come to my attention that the elderly who are under our administration receive food assistance monthly are now only able to get the same assistance every 3 months. This cannot be right, my brother. After a 60% increase in value-added tax for consumption goods, half of the money that you were giving them is being consumed by the tax. You need to put more assistance in the hands of the Social Service Department on Grand Bahama, because the economy is stagnant and people are hurting. This business of the economic empowerment bill is a means to spur economic activity in urban areas. Has nothing to do with the poor. Madam Vice President, I now turn my attention to Clause 6, subsection 1C of the bill, which states that where the Minister of Finance is satisfied that the applicant will have a beneficial effect upon the economy of the zone. My question, and the AG, these are the questions I have to you, sir. My question, how...
This is not question time.
No, but this is my, I asking you. I'm making my speech.
Okay, make your speech.
How will the Minister of Finance make this determination? Secondly, in the same clause, subsection 3A, indicating that the issuing of a certificate of trade and the payment fees. My question is, what are these payment fees and why are they being imposed if you're trying to empower the small man in an economic empowerment zone? Give them the opportunity, give them the incentive. Where these young people are going to get the funding, incentivize them. Incentivize them by dropping the fees.
You don't even know what the fee is.
I'm asking you to clarify it for me because you didn't clarify it in the bill.
You don't have to.
Madam President.
Regulations do those things.
Well, why you didn't bring the regulations?
You want immigration fees? You don't know the immigration fees?
Listen to me, man.
Separate act.
You only
Separate
support
act.
my argument.
Nah, it's foolish.
You wouldn't bring the regulations for us to see.
Foolishness.
And when I ask you about the fees, you tell me the regulations will provide them.
Absolutely.
Listen here, this is the paradoxical nature of your policies.
That's not the paradoxical nature of young people.
Madam Vice President, there's nothing in these bills that provide for financial assistance for residential upgrades, entrepreneurs, and where is the in-depth technical support that you talk about for businesses? How can the government speak about empowering without grant funding or low-interest loans?
What did y'all do?
As far as I am concerned, this is the greatest flaw of your bill.
What did y'all do?
I will tell you what we do, but this is not the time.
Yeah, what y'all do?
So I ask the question again. Why is the government not providing grant funding or low-interest loans for residents, particularly young people with good ideas in the overhill communities?
What did you do?
I am giving my speech, sir.
What did you do?
Let me finish my speech.
I didn't ask what
Madam
you are
Vice
doing.
President,
I said, what did you do?
as we speak with residents in the overhill
I know you're
communities,
giving a speech.
we seem to get more
Riddled with
questions than
hypocrisy.
answers. We're
Riddled
getting
with
questions and
hypocrisy.
answers. The people coming
What
to
did
us.
you do? What did you
You
do?
ain't explain it to
What did
them,
you
so they
do?
coming to us.
What did you do, brother?
I only asking the questions they asked me to ask you.
And what did you do?
Who will protect the people in Overhill
Who did you protect?
from gentrification
Who did you
and to
protect?
prevent wealthy businessmen from pushing them out for business
Who did you
expansion?
protect?
And yes,
Who did you protect over there?
where is the regulatory framework that will outline to us on the side opposite and the residents in these economic empowerment zones, how will they be protected? Madam Vice
Who
President,
did you protect when you...
much of Freeport Grand Bahama is a free trade zone. My question to the government is, after 60 plus years of operating a free trade zone, who is really monitoring the activities of that zone? You're going to do it in 1 year without the regulatory framework? Come on, man. Without the proper regulatory framework, AG, in place, how will your government monitor the activities in these proposed economic zones?
The same way they do it in Freeport.
Paperwork don't mean nothing. Activation of legislation on the
What did you do,
ground
man? What
is
did
a
you do?
completely different
What
policy.
did you do for over there?
Madam Vice President,
What did you do?
as the government attempts to address the rise in poverty index, many of these over-the-hill communities, we must be mindful that there are many settlements in the Family Islands with similar challenges.
Point of
and
order.
also
Point of order, please.
Let me finish.
What is this rise of poverty index?
Yes.
I would like
Poverty
to see...
is
would
going
you,
up.
Well, could you kindly provide that index, a copy of that index to me?
Poverty is
Madam
going up.
President, on a point of order. Yeah. My good friend on the other side, family by marriage, says that we've not addressed the rise of poverty index.
Of the poverty.
The rise of the poverty index.
Yeah.
I call on him to provide me a copy, just a copy of this rise of the poverty index.
Yes. Okay.
Would you kindly provide me a copy of it so that I might know what you wish for me to, because as far as I'm aware, there's no such thing as the poverty index.
Okay.
So
let me clarify
when you could find it,
let me
get it to me,
clarify for you
please.
what it means. In the Department of Social Services yearly report, they speak specifically about the level of poverty in the country. And these statistics clearly outline that the poverty index is on the rise. You get the Department of Statistics report. I don't have the Department of Statistics report. I have read it. I have read it. And it clearly indicates that poverty is on the rise. It is. It's in the Department of Social. I don't have it here. Okay. Well, no problem. I do not have in my possession a copy of the Department of Statistics yearly report. I don't have it. I have read it. I have read it. And if it's uncomfortable to you, I would withdraw the statement. Because the reality is, on the ground, social services are continuously needing to find funding to help the poor because it's increased. Exactly. So you have clarified it yourself. We need more money to support the poor. Madam Vice President, going forward, the government must become more transparent in its approach and outline to the Bahamian, you're the one who talked about transparency and accountability. It's a new era. It's a new era, man. But the era is not reflective of your rhetoric. Madam President, in the lower chamber, both the official leader of the opposition and our deputy outlined our position concerning this bill and suggested that some aspects of the bill should be amended to protect the poor and the residents currently residing in these zones. Therefore, we intend to move a few essential amendments in the committee stage that we believe on this side will protect the poor and prevent issues from arising as a result of this bill.
That's what you wish to see happen.
I would like the leader on the side opposite to know, and the rest of the senators could be rest assured that in the event that our amendments are rejected, when the good Lord give us an opportunity to govern again, our team will bring this bill back to Parliament and fix these irregularities that currently exist in the drafting. Madam President, as I close, we know the great concern with poverty in our country. And these are tough economic times. And many people have been affected as a result of these tough economic times. The government must take steps to address these growing concerns. I appreciate that, AG. This flawed bill serves as proof of the incompetence that is displayed by this administration, trying to rush things out without properly thinking it out. They simply refuse to listen to sound advice, particularly from the people affected by their policy.
The fellows who run the Boulder State on the reef of corruption and destruction.
Their take it or leave it style of governance is unacceptable. We believe that the few amendments that we intend to bring forth will protect and give the residents in these economic empowerment zones the legislative support they need from the concessions.
This can be a long day.
And yes, it's going to be a long day. Yes. The subsidies, the subsidies that are being proposed by the government, we believe the wealthy will benefit, and because the poor cannot be capitalized, they will in turn suffer. Madam President, the AG, when he stood to his feet, fought hard to present the government's case. We are convinced that the bill, although it may have good intent, is flawed because the 15 clauses in the bill does not outline the rhetoric, the political rhetoric the government foreshadowed for the bill. We, on this side, believe that there is additional amendments that must take place for this bill in order for it to be effective. And we are asking the government to take seriously the potential amendments that we will offer during the committee stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Philippines 2 and 4, Madam Vice President, says each of you should be concerned not only about your own interests, but about the interests of others being well. Each of you should be concerned not only about your own interests, but about the interests of others being well. So I proudly acknowledge from the outset, Madam Vice President, our Heavenly Father, and I give thanks for His mercies, guidance, and blessings. And I pray that He continues to use each of us every month, every year that we are in these halls to make a difference in the lives of our people. If I write about the poor, I don't need a good imagination. I have a good memory. And I wish to adopt those words of Gordon Fisher. For as I speak through you today, Madam Vice President, I don't need a good imagination. I have a good memory of growing up on East Street and Wolf Road at Windsor Lane in the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s. I have a good memory of living, playing, schooling, worshiping, and working in some of the poorest areas of New Providence. I don't need to try and imagine what the people over the hill or in these economically depressed areas endure. I have a good memory. I yearn for the day, Madam Vice President, that far less of our people are dependent on social services and are instead able to flourish rather than live paycheck to paycheck every week. I have looked forward to the return of the day that our governments would give our people a hand up rather than continue giving our people a handout. When I came to this table, as with many others here, Madam Vice President, I came here on the agreement that we would make the wealth more common in this Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And that's why we are here on this side. We are here to make the wealth more common. For those who want to play politics at the detriment of human suffering, Madam Vice President, I cry shame on them. And I understand that this microphone carries my voice both near and far, so I'm going to repeat that. For those who wish to play politics today at the detriment of human suffering, I cry shame on you. Giving handouts just before elections isn't empowering our people. It surely isn't empowering your base. The question is, will you vote in favor of empowering our people today? Will you vote in favor of empowering your base today?
Yes, sir.
Madam Vice President, I welcome this government's resolve to wage war on poverty and to assist impoverished communities. It needs to be said, and I will say it knowing that there will be some backlash and fake outrage. Charity is not always a good thing. Charity is not always a good thing, Madam Vice President. There comes a time when you must stop giving handouts and give people a hand up. And this Economic Empowerment Zone bill is the F&M government's hand up initiative for our people. As one of 3 consultative senators, I offer one piece of advice to the government of the day. Do all you can to change the mindset of dependency, idleness, and complacency that has embedded itself in so many of our people. Do all you can to change the mindset of extravagance and the sense of entitlement that has embedded itself in our people. Do all that you can to change that mindset of becoming no more than an employee that has also embedded itself in our people. You see, Madam Vice President, you can open the vault of opportunity to mankind all you want, and as wide as you want. But unless he's able to shake off those vices, that spirit of complacency, entitlement, and seeking to be nothing but an employee, you'd have done it all for naught. And there's a Chinese proverb that I am fond of, Madam President. You give a poor man a fish, and you feed him for a day. And I've seen the PLP do that for decades. You give a poor man a fish, and you feed him for the day. But if you teach the man how to fish, you give him an occupation for a lifetime. And that's what this administration is doing. Madam Vice President, our politicians of old have done a disservice to our people when they've given handouts. And I welcome again this opportunity to empower our people to have an occupation that will provide for them for a lifetime. I heard a well-off individual, Madam Vice President, in the weeks leading up from the House and now here, with this respect to this debate, say that, or he put the question, why do these people get a break? So a well-off individual on a talk show calls in and says, why do these people get a break with this economic empowerment zone bill? And I thought, herein lies the problem. As long as greed is stronger than compassion, we will always have suffering.
I agree with you there. That's why.
To him and any like-minded person, Madam Vice President, today I say, these areas get a break because the number boys under the PLP got a break. Madam Vice President, I say to that individual and any like-minded person in this country, these people in these economically depressed zones get a break because the carnival groups under the PLP got a break. I say to that well-off individual that these people in these zones will get a break.
That's what you quote.
Because foreign investors have gotten a break for a long time in this country. Madam Vice President, they will get a break because compassion will be the order of the day under this administration. That's why they get a break. Because under this administration, compassion is stronger than greed.
Yeah, that's why you give them 60%.
Madam Vice President, there's a misconception or several that have been allowed to foster. Someone said it once, a few people heard it, a few people spread it, and without reading the bill, a few people bought into the rhetoric. A disingenuous individual once asked, how will the provisions of this bill affect the people who live or own property in these areas? He says there'll be gentrification. And when you ask where will they get the funds from, Senator Darville, tell your base the full story. Tell them how they can access the funds from the Bahamas Entrepreneurial Venture Fund. Tell them that the value of their lands over time will increase due to the development of these communities. When you say that the small businesses in these communities, Senator Darville, will be gobbled up, tell the whole story. Tell the people that small businesses now will be able to expand with all of the concessions. Tell them that they can benefit even though they haven't paid their real property tax. The NIB and business license fees are due, as Section 9 of the bill speaks to, that they can make the arrangements to settle those bills and still reap the rewards of this bill and this initiative. When you suggest there are no regulations, Senator Darville,
where the regulations are? When
you suggest there are no regulations, Senator Darville, please point your people to sections 9, 10, 11, and 12 of this bill. There will be no exempted material used for these zones used anyplace else. Senator Darville, direct them to the sections of the bill. They're hearing your voice, but they're not reading the bill. Clause 5 of the bill makes provision for the owner of property situated in the zones who are desirous of improving, renovating, or restoring their property to make an application to the minister for these concessions. And when it speaks to owners, it also speaks to persons who have been residing or in occupation of property for over 12 years. With the consent of the landlord, these persons can make an application to renovate the place they do business in or that they live in. Tell them the full story.
That's the full story.
Madam Vice President, when I was drafting this contribution today, I realized now more than ever that you can never please everyone. I understand some people in the course of their tenure in office set out to do so, but I have never had that problem, and I knock on wood. You can never please everyone. And this bill shows the focus of Prime Minister Minnis after just 1 year in office. We had some persons who served 2 years, some persons who have served us 25 years, and it shows the focus of this Prime Minister and Cabinet to empower our people and to give them a hand up rather than a handout. There has been, Madam Vice President, for at least 15 years, an urgent need to help the people in these communities. As I said earlier, I grew up at the intersection of East Street and Wolf Road. There's Stephen Dillett, Super Value, and Windsor Park. I grew up right there. So I don't need an imagination today. And I've watched that community go lower and lower and lower. If you drive from St. Barnabas on Wolf Road up to Marquis Street on Wolf Road, it looks as if a bomb was dropped in that area that ran every business off. And the residents are living in some of the worst conditions ever. This government has stepped in and said, we will do something about it. This community where I grew up had a man serve as prime minister, and the condition hasn't changed. When they speak about the bill isn't perfect, I want to remind them that the Urban Renewal Initiative, which was a good step in the right direction, was not perfect. It didn't significantly change the over-the-hill areas. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today debating how do we empower and improve these areas. And now that this minister-led administration is rolling out the red carpet for Bahamians, there are some people who have a problem with that. Now that this government is offering free education at UB and BTVI, there are some people who have a problem with that. This administration in rolling out the red carpet is providing service lots, and there are people who have a problem with that. So again, I have learned that you will never be able to please everyone. As the leader said earlier, you do nothing and they say you do nothing. You do something and they say, well, why you didn't do this? And this administration is doing something. And Madam President, as we seek to empower the people in these jurisdictions, in these zones and areas,
It was in your mind.
I say, Madam President, it's time we look at bringing from the Family Islands a system of local government to New Providence to empower these people in New Providence to make decisions for their districts and their zones. Now, I've always been of the view that the government should not come into my community where I grew up on East Street and Wolf Road and remove the trash that we piled up. We make the mess, we should clean it up.
I agree with you.
And I think it's time we look at a system that allows the people in these areas and these districts to put in place their ordinances, to enforce their ordinances, to keep the areas well. When I grew up on East Street, we believed in tidiness. We had respect for ourselves in our community. And I've seen that change because our people have been demoralized. They've had decades of handouts, whereas when I was younger, we believed in a hand up and working hard. And I think we must find a way to return our people and change their mindset, that they care about where they live, they care about their community, they care about their business places, they care about their neighbors. And I see this economic empowerment zone doing just that. Because it now says to a business place in these communities, you must have some corporate social responsibility. You just can't come in the community and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. You must do something for this community. I turn, Madam Vice President, I turn now to places like Inagua, places like Crooked Island, Acklands. In my view, Madam Vice President, I hope that the government, in hearing me, will look at Matthewtown, Inagua, and places like Crooked Island and Ackland and parts of Grand Bahama outside of Freeport and designate those areas as economically depressed zones and provide the people in those areas the same incentive that we're doing here and starting out with here in the over-the-hill areas. To my people over the hill, I say to you, do not sell your land. Do not sell your land. You know, as this bill becomes law, a lot of people will be coming to do business in that community, in that district. Don't sell your land, lease your land. And in those lease agreements, you put a clause in there that says that the tenant is responsible for renovating the property. So you don't find yourself an expense trying to renovate. You see, because the bill allows you to send a letter to the minister to say that I've rented out my place to Clay Sweeting. He's a tenant now. And I've put in my lease that he will be responsible for renovation and allows Clay Sweeting to reap the benefits to renovate the place to open his business establishment. But to my people, I say to you again, while the government is doing its part, you must do your part because this economic empowerment zone bill is twofold. The government in passing this piece of legislation is doing its part. But we in the community must do our part. And to start off, I think we as a community must first look at the gangs and scourge of crime in our communities. The quality and quantity of businesses and occupation opportunities that are possible will not materialize if investors, Bahamians, see that there's still a major criminal presence in these economically depressed areas. The commercial says, Pokemon, them stick up Grammy on the corner. Those days must be a thing of the past. Community leaders, it is time to step up even more And it's time to steer these young men in the right direction. It's time community socials are organized to casually slip in conflict prevention speakers, money management speakers, business management speakers, and direct these young men and young women on how to access the venture capital fund, which is meant for startups and existing business ventures. Madam Vice President, the second thing that I think we as a community must do as the government brings this legislation to empower us is to address the issue of the filth that clogs the streets, the abandoned buildings, and the vacant lots in these communities. The truth be told, again, as I said earlier, when I was younger, we took care of our street, we took care of our yards. We swept not just the porch, but we swept the dirt on the ground. We swept the dirt on the ground till it was smooth and clean.
That's it, man.
That when you were shooting marbles on the ground, it was clean.
Yes, sir. I remember them days.
And now I see people throwing trash right outside their doors. And we must address that mindset. You see, nobody wants to come over the hill once this bill is passed and made law to reap the benefits if they feel they're going to open a business place that's going to be surrounded with dump and crime. So at the community level, we must address that issue of dump and crime. You see, there are a lot of landlords in these over-the-hill communities which are Bahamians that own these places, and as Senator Davos said, he said 60 to 70% of the people that he knew when he grew up in Centerville have moved, and they've rented their places. But a lot of them can't even get their places rented because the young men in the neighborhood have laid claim to the wall, and they hang out on the wall every day. A lot of the young men in the neighborhood have decided to hide their guns in the abandoned cars on the street. They decide to sell drugs from the abandoned buildings on the street. And we, as a community, we have to play our part and clean up that mess that we've created. Madam President, or Madam Vice President, I beg your pardon, I appreciate now more than ever, as I said before, that you can't please everyone. But I think the government of the day is doing its part to empower our people and to give them a hand up, and they should be encouraged. The Prime Minister should be applauded for this initiative. In closing, Madam Vice President, the bill is a part of the people's mandate on this administration. The mandate to make the wealth more common in the Bahamas. That's a part of the mandate. When they voted on May 10th last year, the mandate they gave this administration was to make the wealth more common. And this is that initiative. This is one of many to come. You know, the government is now rolling out the red carpet for Bahamians. We've complained as a people for decades. We see the government roll the red carpet for foreigners and roll the red tape for Bahamians. The F&M government is now rolling out the red carpet for Bahamians, and they're starting with what people say is the least among us. They are making strides in lowering the cost of doing businesses for our people in these areas, and they're starting with these areas. They're increasing the ease of doing business. They're giving our people opportunities rather than handouts. It's the people's time, and that is simple. It's that simple. It's not going to make our residents millionaires overnight, and we all know that. It's not going to make our residents and business owners our brothers keepers overnight, and we know that. And it will not give everybody a job overnight. We know that. But oh, it's going to give them opportunity immediately. It's going to give them the opportunity to learn how to fish rather than wait for some political party to come around and give them a fish every day that they'll be beholding to. I heard Senator Mitchell speak at a PLP event a couple of weeks ago, by mistake now. Just put it on the record. I wasn't there. But I heard Senator Mitchell speak by a voice note, and he said he always encourages his colleagues to take every opportunity to speak. It's practice. And I say today, as you practice today, remember, if you can't help the people of the Bahamas, don't hurt them. I support the bill, Madam Vice President, and I pray that God continues to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and help to use us to make the wealth more common. I support the bill.
Madam Vice President, Senate colleagues, as I rise again in this honorable chamber, I thank God for his blessings and the opportunity to once again speak on behalf of the Bahamian people. We are here today to debate the Economic Empowerment Zone Bill, or the Over-the-Hill Initiative, as some may understand it to be. Madam Vice President, while it is of essence that certain measures be put in place for the functionality of every economy, it is imperative that this F&M government needs to find the means to think about the capabilities and survival of the Bahamian people as well, so that while the people are doing all they can to uphold the government through the 60% increase in VAT and other taxes, they must be very careful that the poor and middle-class Bahamians do not fall back to lack and want. This F&M government must stop playing politics and really commit themselves to empowering the Bahamian people. Thomas Jefferson said in a quote that states as follows: "The care of human life and happiness, and not their destruction, is the first and only object of every good government." Madam Vice President, with a name like Economic Empowerment, this program is hard to resist and sounds like the best thing since sliced bread. After all, who opposed this opportunity? A question I ask is, will this program, as it is currently structured, benefit the rich and developers, or divert investment from more to less productive users, while providing, at best, modest benefits to low-income residents living in the zone? Despite the appeal of empowerment, the track record for place-based initiatives only, without other ways of empowerment, is mediocre at best. Such policies are termed place-based because they focus on a location as opposed to targeting individuals, families, or the people that really need it. More generally, constituent-based programs redirect resources from a diffuse array of more efficient activities and toward less efficient investment in concentrated areas. This makes such policies politically appealing. The concentration of investment in targeted areas makes benefits easy to observe. Madam Vice President, we all know that the government cannot do everything, but the government can, however, make life better by providing a better means to stability and a better life than whatever the people have in place. Apart from the proclamation of legislation that promotes a better life, the people should also be heard and a solution be given to their needs. Recourse must, however, be made to a situation where the government means well for its people, and thereby enact laws that empowers the masses, and must be careful that the rich ones in this society do not hijack it, and the very ones who the program or scheme was set for enjoy the provisions. The right mechanisms must be put in place to ensure that the very ones who the program was scheduled to help gets help. And until that is done, there is a long way to go. Also, we must be honest and reflect on the decision of the government to do certain things. Because, as Modi puts it, good governance with good intentions should be the hallmark of any government. Implementation with integrity should be its core passion. Some may say it is not necessary to question motive, as intention is not everything. But I stand to correct that notion. Intention is everything. Madam Vice President, that's why I ask, will the legislation, once passed, be an active one? We have already a number of dormant laws that is meant to help persons, but without capital or money in hand, the people who are meant to benefit rarely do. So as not to get our hopes raised for nothing, will this help the poor people without cash in hand? Madam Vice President, the idea of economic zoning has been introduced in Europe some years ago, and now has made a shift to the western part of the world, such as the U.S., where they now call it opportunity zones. There is a tax reform bill passed in the United States last year, which became a set of provisions to incentivize new investment in low-income communities throughout their country. The governors were given the opportunity to nominate qualifying areas of their states to receive a new designation as opportunity zones. If the government felt so strongly about this legislation, why were parts of the country alienated? One member of the governing side in the other place was pleading for this to be extended to his constituency in Freeport. I hope this member does not have to beg much longer. Does the government really care about all Bahamians? Let's put people over politics, Madam Vice President.
That's right.
And I want to reiterate this. It is time for the F&M government to put people over politics. Stop campaigning and govern. I wonder if this proposed legislation is not for the mere show of gaining trust from those who doubt the abilities of the government, and not because the government is really passionate about them. Do they really want to make Over the Hill community a better place for its people? Madam Vice President, while I understand that some persons over the hill, or many persons, live in poor social and economic states, there are places across this country that unfortunately suffer the same. Just look at South Eleuthera, and we heard other senators mention this earlier. There are communities here that are suffering the same hardship as people that live in parts of Nassau. Our people need help. As a Family Island, I must continue to be an advocate for the Family Islands. I traveled to Cat Island recently. And you know, Madam Vice President, they still crack rocks in Cat Island. My grandfather used to tell me stories how they used to crack rock to make a living when he was a young boy, and that's 80 years ago.
Still doing that.
And they still crack rocks in Cat Island just to make an honest living, and I respect them for that. But why not extend the benefits of the bill to communities such as Cat Island as well?
Why go back to sea?
Madam Vice President, is the F&M missing the point once again? Does the government feel that this bill will fix the social and economic struggles of the people over the hill? What is the government's main focus with this bill? How is this government showing love to the Bahamian people? Do they show love by cutting the budget for social service assistance for school uniforms? With school year around the corner, school years have yet to begun. Wouldn't you think that proper education and proper facilities would be important as well? And why terminate hundreds of persons across this country at the Job Empowerment Program? And right here in this place, I mentioned about this program, and I was guaranteed 99% of these people will be rehired. Yes. 99%.
You heard that. You heard that.
That day has come and gone. And it is of note that what they really meant to say is 99% will not be hired.
Unless they ask for them.
People were fired so other persons could be rehired. I heard for these people.
Yes, we heard for them.
If that's how you show love to the Bahamian people, don't love me like that.
Don't love us like that. That's right, Clay.
Put people over politics. There is no doubt that this government is lost. And I used to be a fisherman, so I got a compass that I could lend you if you need to right this ship and find the right direction. Madam Vice President, this government talks a good talk, and they would make you think that they are concerned about the poor. But I wonder if it's just their vote that they are concerned about.
Yes. Go get them, Clay.
Madam Vice President, why the government wouldn't create true empowerment zones that focus on people and local services and not just capital investment?
Ah, boy.
The opposition is proposing strong amendments that would encourage local hiring as well. The government should also look into subsidized upfront investment in capital and equipment, or maybe offer loan guarantees. Madam Vice President, there is no evidence that this legislation will be as effective as a true empowerment zone or other redevelopment efforts, particularly when it comes to benefits to local residents. Moreover, the effect of the zone tax subsidies on local residents is ambiguous at best. It's a subsidy based on capital appreciation and not employment or local services, and includes no provisions intended to retain local residents or promote inclusive housing. Madam Vice President, I don't think this bill will do what it is intended to do in its current form. This bill also provides the minister responsible with too much authority. The F&M campaigns so much on accountability and transparency, but yet no regulations were included in this bill. The question is why? Furthermore, the minister responsible is given authority to set regulations him or herself as they see fit. Why would the application be approved by the Minister of Finance, but another minister be responsible for the bill? This bill is lacking at best. There also seems to be a double standard in this legislation where companies that infringe the law are charged with a fine when individuals have the possibility of being sentenced to jail. This is a double standard and open loopholes that should be revisited. Madam Vice President, in an optimistic scenario, this bill might encourage purchasing and rehabilitating of residential property or expanding local businesses. But the value of the tax subsidy is ultimately dependent on rising property values, rising rents, and higher business profitability. That means that this stone could also serve as a subsidy for displacing local residents in favor of high-income professionals and businesses that cater to them. A lot of poor areas in the U.S. are already grappling with the right balance between promoting development and helping existing residents and falling victim to this. With no regulations set in this legislation initially, that might also promote gentrification. Will this retain local residents and preserve or expand low and middle income housing? Or will the residents benefit or be kicked out? While I totally subscribe and honestly support this legislation in principle, I do hope that a lot of the masses benefit from it, and that this would be a start of newer and better initiatives that will be people-tailored. While I would encourage that all hands be on deck, I would also urge the government to put measures in place to ensure that this tax break initiative is not hijacked and brought to an abrupt end. We want this legislation to be as effective as possible and hope that it can change lives for a number of people in society. I would also take this opportunity to call on the government to put more initiatives in place to uplift and promote the Bahamian people. Implement laws that are people-oriented. This government must be focused and have sincere intentions to improve the well-being of the people in this country. I would like to reiterate that it is my utmost hope that the masses in society benefit from this legislation. If we truly want the over-the-hill community to be a better place for our people, we must continually do things that matters, from the little things to the big things. Change in any society is never a one-day affair. It is a continuous effort to improve and to do better. So while this legislation might be a step in the right direction, bigger and better innovations must be done. But most importantly, ensuring that those who are not buoyant in society are the very ones who enjoy these initiatives, and that should be ensured. We must find ways to circulate a bit of wealth among the whole community. I would love to leave you with a reality that Bernie Sanders highlighted in a quote. Election days come and go, but the struggle of the people to create a government which represents all of us and not just the 1%, a government based on the principles of economic, social, and environmental justice. That struggle continues. Our cry as a people, among some other things, is to the effect that a government represents that man out there who has a lot of ideas but lacks the finance to implement them into a thriving business, or that child out there who craves knowledge and desires nothing but maximum education, or to the trader that knows greatly about business but lacks the sufficient capital to establish, to the farmer who lacks the finance to get the needed mechanized tools to improve his farming. So Bahamian people, we are in this together. The reason we need to voice out our needs, concerns, and expectations as a people, because we have two options: either to with one voice cry out as a people, or to forget that we have a government and die in silence. But we have chosen the former, and we are firm. On this side, we are firm in our resolve to continually speak out and to reach out to this government to do its bit by ensuring the people are given what is due to them. For that is the reason it was voted into power in the first place, to do for us collectively what we cannot do individually. We are all concerned about not just our individual progress, but the betterment of our community at large. And believe me when I say this, All matters to me and this side is that over the Hill community advances in every ramification, and that it is that community that would set the path for other communities to follow. Madam President, thank you, and I wish all the people of the Bahamas a safe summer break.
Thank you, Madam President, Vice President. Colleagues, we are making good time, and I once again commend those colleagues who have spoken thus far on the quality of their presentations. I now move that the business of the Senate be suspended until 2:30 p.m. You're going to get 2 hours off, so we leaving before 1, you come back before 3, until 2:30 p.m. If I may obtain a second.
Madam Vice President, I rise a second.